I'm Frank Mayers,
And I'm Allan Galeana.
and this is Wrapped Up, a combat sports and mixed martial arts podcast. And today we are talking to a special guest.
Hi, my name is Cindy, and I'm also a taekwondo athlete.
All right. So I actually met Cindy in a communications class, and she is an active taekwondo / kickboxing athlete. Can you tell us a little bit about what made you pick the sports that you're interested in?
So I started taekwondo when I was young. I did it from ages 7 to 14, but then my dad took me out because he's like old school, makes money, not, professional sports. But he put me in taekwondo because he also has a martial arts background himself. He did judo and aikido, but he realized he wanted a sport that's more versatile and always constantly changing. So taekwondo is more modern. If you notice, it changed a lot, and that's how it's also an Olympic sport now, so it's definitely recognized as a very important, diverse sport. And honestly, he's also a little biased because he thinks jiu-jitsu isn't really as good as taekwondo, so taekwondo was his first choice. But my dojo, they focus on taekwondo, but then for the adults class they give kickboxing, and then this is when I just found out a couple months ago. I didn't know that martial arts consists of everything. I didn't know that small stuff derivates from other stuff. So for example, taekwondo originated from Shotokan, and I didn't even know that until I found out when I told my master I'm doing Shotokan for a class, which is how I met Frank. And
Yep.
So then doing taekwondo martial arts, this is when I also learned all dojos are different. So my dojo is pure cardio, making you stronger. I didn't even know there was this thing as pumse or sparring. I didn't know there were schools that only do pumse, which is only doing forms. I thought any martial arts school you will learn to fight, and then I find out there's a lot of fighters that don't know how to fight, but they practice it, they know the techniques, but they can't actually fight. So at this dojo they prioritize everything. That's when I was like, yeah, I want to stay here. And they keep me in shape low-key, because when I first came they're like, you're out of shape, and I was very hurt. I was like, you're gonna call me out of shape? If you think I'm out of shape, look at my friends. But then they were right, I was out of shape because I couldn't catch up to them, but now I can.
Yeah, we actually came along and trained at your dojo, and it was a very good, very intense workout. So you talked about taekwondo being a major sport. It's an Olympic sport, gets a lot of visibility, and you've actually competed.
Yeah.
So, talk about what level and what the experience of going from just training in a gym to actually competing is like.
So I honestly just went back to taekwondo a year ago. So I did, when I started taekwondo from 7 to 14, I was almost gonna get my black belt, but then my dad took me out when I was testing for it. And I remember being very, very angry. So I had to go to high school and other schools just remember I'm not actually a black belt. I'm not actually officially a black belt, even though I was testing for it. So when I came back to this dojo, I told them, and I was like, oh, I'm red black, but they didn't believe me. So, and it was, of course, when you don't do a sport for years, you're gonna lose it. And so when they saw me, they're like, we're gonna have you start over. You can skip a couple belts, but you're gonna start over at green belt. So doing the sport, right? And then at this dojo, they have a competition team, and so in this competition team you have to go to every single tournament. So if you're not on the competition team at this dojo, you're only required to do 2 tournaments. That's what the master wants. But if you're on a competition team, you go to every single one. So ever since I joined this team, I've gone to every single competition. So I've gone to locals, I've gone to some not big ones, and actually this Saturday will be the qualifiers for AAU Nationals, and I'm actually very nervous because I was sick for a week last week, I think it was last week or last week, but I missed a whole week of training. And when you miss a whole week of not doing something you're used to, it feels like you forget everything. And so I'm very nervous about that, and it's also my first time, and I do get embarrassed when I fight higher belts than me, and they're like, you're really good for a green blue belt, and I'm just standing there yeah, thank you. But then deep down I'm I know I'm a black belt, but it's different now since every dojo has different rules. So my last tournament, my most recent one, I fought a red belt, and I was a black blue belt, and she was like, you're really flexible for a colored belt. And I could just stand there and say, yeah, thank you. What else could you say, because it's the belt you have now. But my master did reassure me it's the skills, not the belt. So at competitions, I try not to feel down knowing that I'm a color belt now, even though I was previously higher. So it makes me feel better that it's the skills that shows, because there's some black belts out there that can't fight. So I try to be more confident going to competitions, and hopefully for this qualifying nationals, I'm not as nervous because, and I'm worried too, because it's hard when they pair up an adult that's a color belt with other adults that are in the color belt division. That division is very low, so it's like a lower chance that I will be matched with someone. But it's okay, because like they say, they let me fight red belts, so maybe there's a chance. I do hope I do well. Competitions still make me anxious, even though like I have so much experience in them.
Yeah, I think competing will always be a nerve-wracking experience, because it's like there's that factor of like, am I better? Am I good? We take a lot of it on personally, and then there's also the fact that like taekwondo, karate, even in more point sparring competitions, there is still kind of a present risk of injury.
Yeah.
It happens. It's kind of unavoidable with a contact, with a contact sport. We do our best to minimize it, but it does happen sometime. Now, your major here at school is in the medical field, right?
Yeah. I major in kinesiology, but I'm going in the medical field.
Okay. And so you see a lot of connection there between your love of fighting and the medical field. Could you talk about how those two kind of work together for you?
Oh, so I chose kinesiology as a major because I was told by other doctors to stand on med school, you should pick a major that's not biology, chemistry, or organic chemistry, because that's what everyone's doing right now. It's more likely if you ask a pre-med student, they major biology. So then I chose the kinesiology route, and also because, it's sports, so I might be better at that aspect. But, so with fighting, right? What came for me to go to the medical field was when I was 14, I had a tournament, and so I fought this one girl, and I did a roundhouse kick to her head, and like it gave her a concussion. And I remember thinking I didn't even kick her that hard. I'm really confident it was like 60% of my power. I didn't even put like my all into the kick, but she fell, and then she like tapped out of the match, and I didn't know until like a couple months later when I went to another local tournament. I felt her tap like my shoulder, and she was like, "Do you remember me? You gave me a concussion." And I was like, "I did? I am so sorry." And then we were actually supposed to fight again, but she's like, "I don't want to fight her again." But then I asked her about the concussion, and she said it was the first time having a concussion. And I was like, I kept apologizing because I felt really bad. And she told me it was a level 3, and so level 1 is not bad. Level 2 is like, this is a little concerning. Level 3 is like, oh yeah, we need to help her. And she lost her memory for a bit, and she had to meet a neurologist. And then the neurologist told her that if I pointed my big toe at like a certain angle, I could have hidden her cranial nerve damage. And I was like, what's cranial nerve damage? She's like, I'm not sure, but it's just more like if you hit one of my nerves, I could have been like paralyzed or lose that memory, lose speech, like everything's connected now. And I just felt bad like the whole time. And then I told her I was sorry. But then I went home and I Googled cranial nerve damage. And when you Google, you go on that deep dive. So I was Googling cranial nerve damage, all this kind of stuff. And then I was like, you know what? It's called neuroscience. I was like, neuroscience, what is that? And then, you Google more about it. That's when I learned neuroscience has so much departments. There's neurology. There's also different jobs in it, neuroradiologist, neurosurgeon. And then you can also even be a physical therapist that majors in neurology. So I didn't know how diverse it was. And then I realized that I wanted to go in the neuro route because the brain is amazing. Because if you want to fight, you need to be smart. Like, to fight, you have to be smart. You need to come up with all these kind of combinations and calculate how to beat your opponent. Because the whole point to win is to use the least amount of kicks, but, like, beat your opponent. Because, the more you kick, you're going to run out of energy. How are you going to keep winning? And then your opponent sees you're tired, then you're dead. So then after that, it made me realize I want to go the neurosurgery route because I realized how sensitive the brain was. And I was also thinking, like, what if I could operate on someone that maybe could change the world? And so she helped open the gateway to neuroscience for me. And it was through fighting. So it's connecting fighting through neuroscience. And then I just took, like, neuroscience programs at University of Pennsylvania and other courses. And that's when I realized I wanted to go that route because fighting is so sensitive, but so is the brain. And there's just so much you can learn from both aspects because, in fighting, what's the number one point? Headshots. And what's at that headshot? The brain. And you need the brain. So I would just imagine if I do become a successful neurosurgeon, I could operate and practice on fighters who have gotten head injuries. And I know the experience myself, so I could tell them, oh, do this, do that to heal, or try this and that. And maybe we could also relate and bond through fighting.
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly cool story. And, looking at combat sports on the highest level, whether it's various Olympic combat sports, boxing, kickboxing, there have been some pretty high-profile incidents where people have had serious brain injuries and have had their lives saved by neurosurgeons.
Yeah, head trauma.
Yeah, and so, I think that's really cool. It's not only a really cool way to get into it, but there's also, like, an exciting possibility that you could potentially save lives. You could make a serious difference in the ring and outside of the ring.
Yes, exactly. It's really sensitive, and not a lot of people realize how sensitive the brain could really be. And so it's like how you can forget one thing but remember something else, and it's like your brain can choose it. So it's really diverse. It's really amazing to think about.
I have a question about the complication that being being in a sport like that and being a medical student. You have a lot of classes, a lot of assignments. What's the workload balance between your martial art that you practice in and the assignments that you get assigned every week?
It's more like it's what you want to choose as a priority. So for me personally, I'm really good at scheduling. I have calendars and I have this big whiteboard at home to write stuff. I also have my friends, my dad, to remind me things that, well, it's like a checklist basically. You need a planner. And how I do it, I also work, but it's more like I have to pick which is a priority. And because I love fighting, and I know like when you age, your body's gonna give out. And my biggest fear, to be honest, is aging badly. So I wanted to prioritize being able to do taekwondo as much as I can. So I just try to finish. You know how professors, when they give work, it's like due this time, 11:59 p.m. So what I do, I just do the assignment that's due the day before, and then when I'm done, then I'll do the next one. And then it's also like, that's how I balance my work schedule. I know some people like to do everything at once and then do it, but for me, I just do it the day before it's due. But it's like I planned it already. It's not like doing it last minute, if that makes sense. So I'm planning, I'll do this and then submit it, and then the next day I'll do this and submit it. And it's convenient because my classes are late at night, and so it finishes before 10 p.m. So then I still have that 2-hour gap to finish homework, but it's really just priority and planning it. And also what I do beforehand, I look at the homework assignment first and then let it marinate in my head for 2-3 days, like, okay, how should I do this, how should I plan it, and what should I write about, and then I do it. I think that's what makes it easier for some people. But if it's like reading textbook and answering, then read it first and then let it marinate, and then go back, reread some parts, and then do the work. That's just how I do it though.
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy. I think there's definitely some neuroscience behind, letting it sit. If anyone out there ends up taking the humanities course with Sal Breiter, he's big on the whole letting things marinate, letting things sit. So I think that's really cool. I think it's really impressive that you're able to balance so much of that. That's quite a bit on the schedule, and still being able to find time to compete. Although I don't know if you're the same way, I find it sometimes easier to like get assignments done and things after like a really hard training session.
Oh no, that's not me. No.
Okay, because for me it's like after a hard training session I can't worry about any of the little things. I'm just kind of like, I feel great, and I'm just kind of like, okay, you know what, those big problems and things I was worrying about, unless there's like a competition coming up, even then, it's like, for me, it builds confidence. And after a hard training session, I'm like, I can't worry about like, is this assignment due? It's just like, I'll get it done. I
hate sweating. So after a workout, I'm like, I need a shower. I need to change my clothes. Then I eat. You know how you can't eat before workout, you'll throw up. So I need to do all that. Then I'll do my homework. But that's impressive though, with mad respect. Because for me, if I'm sweating, I would think I'm like the stinkiest person in the room.
Yeah. I mean, you still want to be clean and shower and everything, but like just that general time after the workout, I find it like just a lot easier to be mentally clear and just not have to worry about things.
True. Exercise, martial arts is really a great way to help calm down, relax the mind, especially if you have a bad day, you're angry, you go in there, you're getting beat up, or you're beating up the bag, then yeah, it's all gone. Mine is definitely clear. I do agree with you on that. Sometimes I come to class, I'm angry, and then, oh man, doing all that, I'm like, what was I even angry about?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I, to be able to be successful, especially in sparring or in competition, you have to be present.
Yeah.
If, I think everyone who sparred has had that day where like you couldn't just leave it outside the gym, and you can feel you're just like not locking in sparring, and it's one of the worst, most frustrating feelings ever. But then sometimes you can kind of just get that, you can kind of just like lock in and you find that spot, and the other stuff, whatever was holding you back, just kind of like vanishes for a while.
I don't know why, but even though I've done multiple tournaments, at every single one, I'm still anxious. I still can't sleep the night before, whether sleeping pills or being super tired. I'm still anxious. And they train you harder than ever than a tournament, because at a tournament, the match is just 2 minutes long.
Yeah.
And then you're done. But like, and so they push you, and I'm like so tired, and I can survive that. But when I come to an actual tournament, I'm nervous. I remember I went to a tournament very recently, a couple months ago in Pasadena, and it was an expensive trip, by the way. I paid $1,000 total for registration, and then the flight, and then the hotel. Pasadena's not cheap. It's in LA County, you know? And like, dude, I fought horribly. I don't know why. I fought like I was scared, and even all my masters, my teammates, even the parents were like, why'd you fight so like soft? Because I'm an aggressive fighter, and I was like, I don't know. I think I was just nervous. Like, and it was also it was also Dado too, and I was just nervous. And I remember I landed a bunch of headshots on her nose, and she like hurt, and she did cry too. But it doesn't count because, you know, Dado, the machine counts it. So if I'm hitting her nose, I'm not hitting the helmet with sensors, so it doesn't count. But after that tournament, I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I was just so nervous for no reason, and I'm still nervous again, and I want to work on that. But I think it's just, it makes no sense to me how you can be so tired at a tournament, but then like the tournament's nothing compared to training, and so it makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I think with any sort of competition in combat sports, there's always the day before where you're just like anxious. Like there's just that sense that sinks in your skin, in your brain, and that's a very
Common feeling.
It's a very, but it's also very common.
Yeah.
Like I've heard of a lot of even some of the highest level UFC fighters
Yeah.
who would be like, the coaches will almost literally have to like drag them to like do the walkout because they don't want to do it. It's scary. I think the thing that always intimidated me the most, but also the guys who a lot of times you see have some of the best cardio, are the ones who just like are out there having fun, who like you can tell they don't really care, because there's like, the more tense we are and nervous about something, our body is expending more energy. When you look at the fighters who can just kind of like do a little dance in the middle of a fight and are just like free and having fun, they tend to have a lot better cardio just because they're not so tense. Their whole nervous system is, more relaxed. And of course in competition, that doing stuff like that and clowning around brings its own, brings its own risks, but it's also different for different people.
You don't know who you're gonna fight. I guess what's make everything more anxious for me. I'm terrified of height. Like, if I had to fight someone taller than me, then that's when I get anxious. I don't care about if they're a heavier category or if they're like, let's say top 30 in the whole world. If they're taller than me, then that's when I will feel anxious. And you don't know, and it's like, I know, it's just looks like you're probably being catfish. Like, they could be super built, but they could probably like no flexibility, no kicks. But it's just the feeling of fighting someone taller than you that makes you anxious. And my master's son made a really good point that did make me feel a little better, was that in the Olympics, it's just who's better that one day. Just that one day, whichever athlete is better is like considered like number one, because a bunch of Olympics, they come from around the world, right? You could fight someone that's better than you, but that day they're like not feeling good, they're nervous, and you beat them, then you would be considered number one. And so he's just like, who was better that day? That's it. And I was like, you're right. At that tournament, it doesn't matter who's better than the other. It's just who's better that one day specifically that is considered the winner. Yeah,
I think that's a really healthy outlook. I think that's an important way to look at it for competition. And like, you can see it in the gym too, where it'll be like, you're having an off day or someone else has an off day, and it's like,
you feel scared. You see someone training, they're so good, their technique's crazy. You're like, oh, my technique's not like that. But then you guys end up fighting. Who's ever better that day? Doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. Anything else?
No, I think we're at a good point. I think we can wrap up today's episode. Today was episode 7 of the Wrapped Up MMA and Combat Sports podcast. Thank you again to Cindy for appearing to today's episode. Frank?
Yeah, thank you again. As Allan said, thank you, Cindy. It's awesome having a student athlete, a student who trains. You've actually come by Dianzo's Shotokan.
I
trained.
did, yeah.
Awesome experience. And so this has been episode 7 of Wrapped Up. a combat sports and MMA podcast. Wrapped Up is a Lovos News and De Anza College production. All facilities and equipment used to record this podcast have been supplied by De Anza College. Thanks for listening.